Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. Nani the Today is Tuesday, which means it's time for another episode of the new phone show. So Zach, here's what I'm going to do, right? I'm going to take this cloth, I'm going to throw it at the camera, right? And then you see how there's nothing on the table? When the thing hit the camera, poof, then the box will come out. See, I'll show you what happened. Now it's time for another episode of the new phone show. Today's guest... Okay, so Xiaomi has always been the king of the Pang Lang Zhang, right? That means you get a lot of smartphone specs for often very little money, or usually it's like the most bang for your buck. And probably the most popular series that they launched recently is the T series. So this is the latest two devices in the T series, the 11T and the 11T Pro. What I don't understand though is why they call it the Xiaomi 11T and not the Xiaomi Mi 11T. Okay, it was so much easier. We could just say Mi 11T. Their website is called mi.com. Their logo still says Mi, but apparently their phones are not Mi anymore. But anyway, that's a small personal gripe. The phones though, they are good devices, even if they are a little bit more expensive than the predecessor. Alright, so let's open it up. Actually, I opened already lah. Okay, so the phones are actually over here. This is the 11. Which is the 11T? This is the 11T Pro and this is the 11T. But the reason why I have the boxes here is because I want to show you something about the boxes as well. So first of all, these two are the same smartphone, as in like they have the same size. But the 11T Pro's box is slightly bigger. At first I thought, wow, while Samsung and Apple are racing to make their boxes small, Xiaomi is like, I'm gonna make one box bigger just for fun. But it's actually not just for fun, because it's actually one of the interesting things that you do get is the power brick. The biggest difference between these two smartphones, and that is the size of the power brick. This is the 11T Pro's power brick and this is the 11T's power brick. Why is one so much bigger? Well, I mean, if you can read the text, then you'll know why, but I'll touch on that a little bit later. That's pretty much all there is to do with the unboxing experience. Everything else is pretty much the same. You get like the little divider, little plastic case, and then in these you get a little SIM eject tool and also a silicone case and some paperwork. Nothing too special, but is expected. At least they still give you charger. Huh? Now let's talk about the smartphones. And I'm gonna be honest, there's not a whole lot that separates these two smartphones. First of all, they both have 6.67-inch displays and they are both AMOLED panels with a refresh rate of 120 Hz, which is really nice. These screens are actually just super nice. Like they're crisp, they're bright, punchy. They've got a lot of just like OLED goodness, like I really like them. The previous version, the Mi 10T, they had 144 Hz screens, so it's slightly faster than this one, but they were LCD panels and they were kind of meh. But this one's, I think, is a very good balance between like just the really nice punchy colors and contrast of OLED with a fast 120 Hz refresh rate screen, obviously with Xiaomi's adaptive refresh rate technology as well. Both of these smartphones also feature stereo speakers flanking them, so you've got a speaker grill at the top and a speaker grill at the bottom. But there is one difference. So if you notice, if I hold up these smartphones together, you can see that this one, which is the Pro, has the Harman Kardon text, while the other one, which is not the Pro, don't have. But actually, like to my ears, they sound really similar. Like they both get really loud, they are both pretty full, and they've got nice left to right separation, although not a whole lot of bass. But still, I would say pretty good speakers.
Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 3 is not the first flipping smartphone, but you could make the argument that it's the best. And after spending a little over a day with this smartphone, I think it's now my favorite flipping smartphone. And that's because of 3 reasons. Number 1, the form. You see, I have an obsession with small form factor smartphones because I'm just so tired of phones getting bigger and bigger until to the point where they don't even fit properly in my pockets.
Well, these smartphones also have really similar builds. As you can tell, they've got really glossy backs and this like gentle curve that's actually pretty comfortable, quite ergonomic in the hand. The frame is also slightly curved, but it's quite thick, so you feel a lot of it. It's not sharp. It's pretty nice to hold for such a big smartphone. I also like the more squared off screen design because I'm not a huge fan of like overly rounded smartphones. But yeah, so this is nice. I would say overall build quality is like, it's good, but it's not quite like right at the top, the most premium kind of smartphones. This is like decidedly mid-range to like premium mid-range, but it feels the part too, so it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just, it doesn't feel expensive lah. I also think the looks are a little bit boring. They look a little bit too much like Redmi Note 10. I would have preferred like the more, the rounded camera design of the Mi 11. I think that would have been more unique, or it would fit a more expensive smartphone like this. But this is what you get. So speaking of looks, they are actually completely identical from the back, from the sides, from the front, with the only visual marking that I could find that separates these two smartphones is at the top, which is, one has the Harman Kardon text and the other one doesn't. So besides that, they're exactly the same. In fact, I asked everyone in the office, everyone who would talk to me if they could tell which phone was which. They couldn't. One fella hantam correctly but lucky I guess. 50-50 chance. Probably the biggest difference between these two smartphones, or at least the one that I think you might notice the most, is the processor. So the 11T Pro comes with a Snapdragon 888 processor, which is the best Snapdragon processor, or at least the flagship class Snapdragon processor that you find in most flagship smartphones, while the 11T comes with MediaTek's Dimensity 1200 Ultra processor. So I know like there's a lot of like negative feelings or emotions around MediaTek, like MediaTek by the Snapdragon smartphone. And I was also not very sure how the Dimensity 1200 Ultra would perform. So I ran a couple of tests between these two smartphones. I did like a lot of media browsing, I did a lot of YouTube watching, and I did a lot of gaming. So I played the two games that I tested out. One was Asphalt 9, the other one was Genshin Impact, and I gotta say, the Dimensity 1200 Ultra was able to do pretty much, it was able to do everything that the Snapdragon 888 could do. I could run both games at like maxed out settings, and they both gave me pretty much exactly the same experience. One difference though, I think, is that the MediaTek ran a little bit hotter. It was slightly warmer. But besides that, it didn't thermal throttle, so I don't think that's going to be a big issue at all. So yeah, as far as performance goes, I was surprised. I expected the MediaTek to not be as powerful, but it turns out it's also okay. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that the MediaTek processor is going to be as good or is better than the Snapdragon processor. No, because people have told me that the MediaTek processor is slightly less efficient, and it's not going to be as smooth as the Snapdragon processor. But at the same time, I don't think that it's as bad as you think, which is, I think, the important thing. Because as far as the short amount of testing that I've done, they both seem to run everything just fine. Besides the processor though, both of these devices do come in slightly different memory configurations. So the 11T comes with 8 gigs of RAM and either 128 or 256 gigs of internal storage, while the 11T Pro comes with either 8 or 12 gigs of RAM with either 128 or 256 gigs of internal storage. Both of them though are using UFS 3.1 storage, so it's fast. One thing that I don't like for either of these smartphones though is the side-mounted fingerprint scanner. So much like the Redmi, it uses like this kind of arced power button configuration. So it's supposed to, I guess it blends better into the frame, but I just don't like the position. I feel like it's the most inconvenient position possible. And I don't know why they didn't just go for an in-display fingerprint scanner, because it is an OLED screen. You can definitely just do that. So I'm not sure why they went with this. But functionally, I guess it works fine. If you've ever used like a side-mounted fingerprint scanner from Xiaomi, then this is pretty much the same experience. So it's pretty fast, it's pretty accurate, but just positionally not my favorite. Now though, I want to move on to the camera, and both of these smartphones have the same camera system. So it's a triple camera setup. You've got a 108 megapixel main camera, that's the one with the wide lens. You've got an 8 megapixel ultra wide camera and a 5 megapixel telemacro camera. And images from both of them are unsurprisingly very similar. They look okay. I think in daylight they are pretty decent. They're definitely usable, but you know, in typical Xiaomi fashion, they do crank up like the saturation and the colors just a little bit, even with AI off. But you know, I think the photos should look nice on social media and if you don't like to edit photos, then you can probably use them straight out of camera. In low light though, I would definitely recommend shooting with night mode on, because I think the image quality is much nicer with night mode on. With night mode off, I would say a lot of the shots are not very usable. But one thing you should keep in mind is that these smartphone cameras, the 108 megapixel sensor, does not have optical image stabilization. So when you're shooting low light photos, you really have to hold steady. Otherwise, any kind of like handshake blur, it's going to bleed into your photos, and that is very annoying. But yeah, I think as a whole, the camera is okay. I think daylight shots look pretty good. The ultra wide is also nice, but it doesn't have a lot of detail because it's only an 8 megapixel sensor. The macros camera though, I mean, it works as a macro camera. The photos look okay, but after being spoiled by like the Find X3 Pro's microscope camera, I think it's kind of hard to compete lah. But functionally, yeah, sure, you could take some close-ups with it. And now for the final difference between these two smartphones. While they both have 5,000 mAh batteries, which I think is pretty good. I think it's like, this is the average that everybody needs to get now, 5,000 mAh battery. But the 11T Pro comes with a 120 watt fast charger, while the 11T only has a 67 watt fast charger. So that's a pretty big difference in terms of charging performance. If I'm not mistaken, the 11T Pro, it can fully charge in just like, I think like 17 minutes or something ridiculous like that. But yeah, that's pretty much it with regards to the specs of the smartphone and what I think about them. I think if you're expecting like a super premium smartphone, obviously this is not the series for you, because these are designed to be like affordable mid-range devices, and you're also not getting, you know, the premium kind of features like water resistance or like, you know, any of those like ecosystem features that you find in like a Samsung or an iPhone. But functionally, this is pretty much everything you need in a smartphone, which now brings me to the most important point, and that is the price. So this year we're getting 4 different variants for this smartphone. So like I said earlier, you get the base model for the 11T with 8 gigs of RAM, 128 gigs of storage. That device is priced at 1,699 ringgit, whereas you can upgrade the storage to 256 gigs, but then you have to pay 1,899 ringgit. And then if you add 200 bucks on top of that, you can get the base model 11T Pro with 8 gigs of RAM and 256 gigs of storage. That is priced at 2,099 ringgit. Whereas if you want to really ball out with the 12 gigs of RAM and 256 gigs of storage, then you can get the top spec model for 2,299 ringgit. So I think across the board, it is slightly more expensive. It's definitely a bit more of a premium compared to the 10T. And this time there is more separating the two devices, because last time on the 10T, they both had the same processor. That being said, I think as a whole, these are better smartphones. And yes, I did say that the Dimensity processor could do pretty much everything the Snapdragon processor could do, but there was slight differences. For example, in the camera module, in the camera app, sorry, you have there is like a slight delay when you press the shutter with the Dimensity phone compared to with the Snapdragon phone. The same thing with night mode processing, the Snapdragon phone is just slightly faster. So I mean, considering the difference in price between the top spec 11T and the base model 11T Pro, I would definitely pay the 200 ringgit to get the 11T Pro with 8 gigs of RAM and 256 gigs of storage. That's the sweet spot, that's the phone you should get, and this is it for this episode of the New Phone Show. Alright, let me know what you think of the brand new 11T and 11T Pro, and if you're interested in starting a petition to get Xiaomi to reintroduce the Mi name in their smartphones, let me know because I also want to sign. Alright, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the notification bell icon so you can see more further episodes of the New Phone Show. Also, whatever other devices you want me to check out, make sure you let me know, okay? You can also like us on Facebook, but our home on the internet will always be at surgeonchow.com. Alright, this is me, Rory, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.